My name is Vrenthal Koran. I am an ambassador of the Sheathi Compact, and I have served on the Galactic Council for 111 cycles. In all that time, I have watched many species come to this chamber with hope in their hearts and requests on their lips. I have watched most of them fail, but there is one story I tell more than any other, because it changed the way I think about strength, about courage, and about what it truly means to protect someone. This is the story of how humans became the only species allowed to guard the Galactic Council. When the humans first arrived, they were still new to the wider galaxy. Their ships were simple compared to ours, their technology was still growing, but there was something different about them from the very first day. They did not come to us asking for power or wealth. They came with a small group of people, wearing robes that did not quite fit them, and they made one simple request. They wanted a chance to guard the council chamber. Many of us laughed. Not out loud, of course, because most species on the council have learned to hide their reactions behind careful manners. But I remember feeling amused inside my own mind. The humans were young. They had barely left their own solar system. And here they were, standing before ancient civilizations, asking to be trusted with the safety of the most important room in the galaxy. I do not feel amused anymore, not after everything I saw. The council agreed to give them a trial period of 6 months, mostly because refusing outright would have caused unnecessary tension. Nobody expected much to come of it. I certainly did not. I believed, like many others, that this trial would end quietly, with humans returning home and the council continuing with its usual guards, the Voth Enforcement Corps, a group known for their discipline and long history of service. But nothing about the following months was quiet. The first thing I noticed about the human guards was how differently they carried themselves compared to other soldiers I had known. The Voth moved with precision, like machines built for order. The Kralik guards, when we had used them decades earlier, moved with raw power, always ready to overwhelm an enemy through sheer force. The humans moved differently. They watched, they listened, they paid attention to small details that other species often ignored, like the tone of someone's voice, or the way a visitor's hands trembled slightly before they spoke. I remember asking one of the younger human guards, a woman named Elena, why she watched people so closely, instead of simply guarding the doors. She smiled and said something I still remember clearly. She said that danger rarely announces itself. It hides in ordinary moments, in things that seem unimportant until it is too late. She told me that paying attention to small details was often the only warning anyone would get. I thought about her words for a long time after that conversation. The first major test of the humans came earlier than anyone expected. It happened during a routine trade meeting, one of hundreds we hold every cycle, discussing tariffs and resource agreements between smaller star systems. Nothing about the meeting seemed important enough to require extra caution. That is, until a group of separatists from the Kralik homeworld managed to slip past the outer checkpoints. The Kralik are a powerful species, built for endurance and physical strength. Their bodies are covered in thick natural armor, and even a small group of them can cause serious damage in a short amount of time. When the alarm sounded, most of the delegates inside the chamber froze in fear. I remember the sound of my own heartbeat rising, the strange tightness in my chest that comes only in moments of true danger. There were only 2 human guards stationed near the entrance that day. I expected them to retreat, to seal the doors and wait for reinforcements, as the standard protocol required. Instead, they moved forward, directly toward the danger, without hesitation. I watched the security recording many times afterward, trying to understand what I had seen. The 2 guards did not fight with wild anger or reckless bravery. They fought with calm focus, moving together as if they had trained for this exact moment their entire lives. They protected the doorway long enough for the chamber to be sealed and for additional security to arrive. Nobody inside the room was harmed. One of the guards was injured, but he made a full recovery within a few weeks. When I visited him during his recovery, I asked why he did not wait for backup. He looked at me with a puzzled expression, as though the question did not quite make sense to him. He said that in that moment, there was no one else standing between the danger and the people inside that room, so it had to be him and his partner. There was no time to think about waiting. There was only the choice to act. At the time, I believed this was simply bravery, perhaps even recklessness. I thought perhaps humans placed less value on their own safety than other species did. I did not yet understand the deeper truth behind their actions. As the months passed, more incidents occurred, each one revealing another piece of the puzzle. One evening, during a private gathering between several delegates, one of the maintenance systems in the building malfunctioned, causing a small fire in one of the lower levels. It was not a large fire, but smoke began spreading quickly through the ventilation system. Most guests were unaware of the danger because the alarms in that section had also failed. It was a human maintenance worker, someone not even part of the official guard, who noticed the smoke first. Instead of simply reporting the issue and waiting for instructions, she moved through the halls herself, knocking on doors, guiding confused delegates toward the nearest exits. She personally checked several rooms to make sure no one had been left behind, even as the smoke grew thicker. When I asked her afterward why she took such a risk without being asked to, she gave a simple answer. She said that someone had to make sure everyone got out safely, and there was no time to wait for someone else to take responsibility. She said it was not about being brave. It was simply the only thing that made sense to her in that moment. I began to notice a pattern forming. It was not one dramatic act of heroism that made humans different. It was this constant, quiet willingness to step forward when others might hesitate, even when it was not their official duty to do so. Then came the third incident, the one that changed everything for me personally. A small group within the council itself, driven by political ambition, attempted something far more dangerous than any external threat we had faced. They planned to secretly harm 3 delegates during a closed session by tampering with the air filtration system, introducing a substance that would have caused symptoms resembling a natural illness. If successful, no one would have suspected foul play at all. It would have looked like an unfortunate accident. It was a human cleaning contractor, someone with no official security training, who noticed something unusual. She had worked in that building for over a year and knew the maintenance schedule by heart. She noticed that the filtration systems in one section had been replaced earlier than scheduled, without any official record explaining why. Instead of ignoring the small detail, she reported it through proper channels. But she did something more as well. Worried that her report might not reach the right people in time, she personally stood outside the door of the chamber where the delegates were scheduled to meet, refusing to let anyone enter until someone with proper authority arrived to investigate. Her actions likely saved the lives of 3 respected members of this council. When I asked her why she took such a personal risk, especially since stopping a council session without authorization could have resulted in serious consequences for her, she gave a simple shrug, a gesture I had come to recognize as uniquely human. She said that if something happened to those people and she had said nothing, she would never have forgiven herself. She said it was better to face trouble for speaking up than to stay silent and let harm come to someone she could have warned. It was in that moment that I finally began to understand the true nature of human guardianship. It was never about training alone, although their training was thorough. It was never about physical strength alone, although many humans possessed impressive endurance and resilience. It was something deeper, something built into the very core of how they saw their place in the world. Humans seemed to carry an instinct, present in nearly all of them regardless of their job or role, that made them step forward to protect others without needing permission or instruction. It was not something taught through military discipline. It appeared to exist naturally within their culture, passed down through generations, expressed differently across individuals but always present in some form. I began speaking with more members of the human delegation to understand where this instinct came from. Many of them described stories from their own history, stories of ordinary people who protected strangers during disasters, wars, and personal tragedies throughout their long and often difficult past. They spoke of parents protecting children, neighbors helping neighbors, and strangers risking themselves for people they had never met before. One older human diplomat explained it to me in a way I still remember clearly. He said that throughout human history, many terrible things had happened because people stayed silent or turned away when others needed help. Over time, this pain taught many humans a lesson that became deeply rooted in their culture. If you are able to help someone in danger, you do not wait for permission. You act, because waiting too long can cost a life. I found this explanation both simple and profound. It was not a magical trait exclusive to humans. It was something they had learned through immense suffering and had chosen to carry forward as a guiding principle, teaching it to each new generation in different ways. As the trial period continued, more members of the council began to notice similar patterns. Reports came in from various sections of the building, each describing small moments where human staff or guards had gone beyond their assigned duties to protect someone else, often without asking for recognition afterward. A young Thessari delegate once told me a story about a human guard who noticed she seemed unusually anxious before an important speech. Instead of ignoring her discomfort, he quietly offered to stand nearby during her speech so she would feel more supported, even though it was not part of his official assignment. She said his simple gesture helped calm her nerves enough to deliver one of the most important speeches of her career. Another delegate, from a species known for its strong dislike of physical closeness, described an incident where she had fallen ill suddenly during a council session. A human guard, noticing her distress before anyone else did, quickly but respectfully guided her to safety, careful not to touch her in ways that might cause discomfort, showing an unusual level of cultural awareness for someone outside her own species. These stories, small as they seemed individually, began forming a much larger picture. Humans were not simply strong or well-trained. They were deeply attentive to the needs of others, willing to adapt their actions to protect people in the way that best suited each individual situation. By the time the 6th month arrived, the council had gathered enough evidence and testimony to hold a formal vote on whether human guardianship should become permanent. I was asked to speak before the vote, largely because I had been one of the more vocal skeptics at the beginning of the trial period. I remember standing before the assembled delegates, searching for the right words to explain what I had witnessed over the past several months. I told the council that I had spent over a century believing that true strength came from discipline, from following rules perfectly, from mastering combat and strategy above all else. I told them that I had believed protection was a skill that could only be taught through strict training and years of preparation. I told them that I now believed something different. I explained that while other species on this council possessed excellent soldiers, skilled guards, and well-designed protocols, there was often a hidden weakness in relying purely on training and procedure. Rules and protocols work well in situations they were designed for, but the real world often presents situations no manual could ever fully predict. In those moments, a guard who follows only training might hesitate, unsure of what to do when the situation falls outside their instructions. Humans, I explained, seemed to carry something beyond training. They carried an instinct that filled the gaps where protocol could not reach. This instinct did not ask whether a situation matched an official procedure. It simply asked whether someone needed protection, and if the answer was yes, it acted immediately. I told the council that I had watched this instinct save lives, prevent disasters, and offer comfort in ways that no written rule could have ever accomplished. I explained that this was not a claim of human superiority over other species, but rather an observation of a unique strength that made them especially suited to the role of guardianship. I reminded the council that trust in matters of safety cannot be built on strength alone. It must be built on the confidence that whoever stands at the door will act to protect you, no matter how unusual or unexpected the danger might be. When the vote was called, it passed with full agreement from every delegate present, including several who had expressed doubts about humans in other areas of diplomacy. Even those who disagreed with humanity on matters of trade, culture, or political policy agreed on this one point: human guardianship over the Galactic Council chamber would become permanent. In the years that followed, human guards became a familiar and respected presence throughout the council halls. Their reputation spread across many star systems, and other governing bodies outside the Galactic Council began requesting human guards for their own important gatherings, though the council maintained strict rules ensuring that humans assigned to council duty remained dedicated fully to this responsibility. I continued to build friendships with several human guards over the following cycles, learning more about their culture, their history, and their unique way of viewing the world. One guard in particular, named Marcus, became someone I considered a close friend despite our very different backgrounds. Marcus had been one of the two guards involved in the very first major incident I witnessed, the confrontation with the Kralik separatists. Over the years he remained stationed at the eastern entrance of the council chamber, becoming something of a familiar figure to delegates from many different species. I often brought him small gifts from my homeworld, a gesture of friendship common among the Sethi people. He found this habit amusing, though he always accepted the gifts with genuine appreciation. In turn, he would sometimes share stories from his own homeworld, teaching me about human customs, traditions, and history that I had never learned through official diplomatic channels. During one of these conversations, many cycles after the initial vote, I asked him a question that had been on my mind for some time. I asked him whether he ever felt burdened by the responsibility of guarding such an important place, knowing that the safety of so many important leaders rested partly in his hands. He thought about the question carefully before answering, which was something I had come to appreciate about him. Humans, I had learned, often paused thoughtfully before answering questions that truly mattered to them, rather than responding immediately without consideration. He told me that yes, there were moments when the weight of responsibility felt heavy, but he said that this weight was not something to be feared or avoided. He explained that protecting others was not simply a job to him, but something that gave his life meaning and purpose. He said that knowing he stood between danger and innocent people gave him a sense of pride that no other kind of work could offer. I asked him whether he ever worried about what might happen if a danger arose that was too great for him to handle alone. He smiled at this question, a gesture I had learned to recognize as a sign of quiet confidence rather than arrogance. He said that no single guard could protect everyone from every possible danger alone, but he said that was exactly why humans worked as a team, trusting each other completely, knowing that if one person could not handle a situation alone, another would be there to help immediately. He said this sense of trust between human guards was just as important as their individual skills. This conversation stayed with me for a long time afterward. It helped me understand another important piece of why human guardianship worked so effectively. It was not simply about individual bravery. It was about a deep sense of shared responsibility, a belief that protecting others was a duty shared by the entire group, not just one person acting alone. Over the following cycles, I witnessed many more moments that reinforced this understanding. During a particularly tense political dispute between two rival star systems, tensions inside the council chamber grew so high that a physical confrontation seemed almost unavoidable. Delegates from both sides began raising their voices, some even standing from their seats in anger. It was the calm, steady presence of the human guard stationed nearby that helped ease the tension. Rather than reacting with aggression or forcing the delegates into silence, the guards simply stepped closer, their presence alone serving as a quiet reminder that violence would not be tolerated within these walls. Their calm demeanor seemed to have a settling effect on the room, allowing cooler heads to eventually prevail. I later learned that human guards received specific training in reading emotional tension within a room, learning to recognize the early signs of conflict before it escalated into something more serious. This skill, combined with their natural instinct to protect rather than provoke, made them uniquely effective at maintaining peace within the chamber, even during moments of intense political disagreement. As more cycles passed, I began to reflect more deeply on what this entire experience had taught me, not just about humans, but about the nature of trust and protection itself. I had spent over a century believing that strength was measured by power, by the ability to overwhelm a threat through sheer force or superior technology. But my time observing human guardianship taught me a different lesson. True strength, I came to realize, was not simply the ability to defeat a threat. It was the willingness to place oneself between danger and another person, without hesitation, without needing permission, and without expecting anything in return. This willingness, I learned, could not be taught through military drills alone. It had to be woven into the very culture of a people, passed down through generations, reinforced through countless small acts of courage performed by ordinary individuals throughout their long history. Humans carried this lesson with them into every role they filled within the council, whether as official guards, maintenance workers, or simple visitors passing through the halls. Their willingness to act for the safety of others, regardless of personal risk or reward, became the foundation of a level of trust that no other species had managed to earn in quite the same way. Many cycles have now passed since that first trial period began. Marcus still serves at the eastern entrance, though his hair has grown gray and his steps have slowed slightly with age. Younger human guards now stand beside him, many of them trained personally by veterans like him, carrying forward the same instincts and values that first earned humanity this position of trust so many years ago. I often think back to that early conversation I had with him, back when I first began to understand the true nature of human guardianship. I remember asking him, half in curiosity and half in doubt, whether humans could ever truly protect an entire galaxy filled with countless different species, cultures, and needs. He had thought about the question carefully before answering, just as he always did. He told me that humans were, by nature, a stubborn people. He said that if the day ever came when the whole galaxy needed protecting, humans would find a way to stand in every doorway that needed guarding, even if it meant training generations of guards to carry that responsibility forward long after he was gone. I believed him then, and I believe him still today. This is why humans are the only species allowed to guard the Galactic Council. It is not because they are the strongest, though they are certainly capable. It is not because they are the most skilled in combat, though their training remains among the finest in the galaxy. It is because, out of every species I have studied across more than a century of service on this council, humans are the only ones who never seem to need a reason to protect someone else. They do not wait for orders. They do not wait for danger to be confirmed beyond doubt. They simply see someone who might need protection, and they step forward, again and again, without fail. In all my years on this council, I have never once seen a human guard hesitate at that door, and I do not believe I ever will.